Detective Jameson had seen his fair share of gruesome crime scenes during his 20 years on the force, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to witness. It was a cold, rainy night when he received the call. A body had been found in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. When he arrived on the scene, the stench of death hit him like a brick wall. He put on his gloves and stepped inside the dimly lit building. The first thing he noticed was the blood. It was everywhere, splattered on the walls, pooled on the ground, and smeared across the concrete floor. The second thing he noticed was the silence. There was no sound except for the pattering of raindrops on the tin roof. He slowly made his way towards the source of the smell. As he turned a corner, he saw it. The body. It was lying on its back, face twisted in a grotesque expression of pain. Jameson had seen plenty of dead bodies, but there was something different about this one. It was as if the victim had been ripped apart by a wild animal. There were deep gashes on the chest and limbs, and bite marks on the neck. But what really caught Jameson's attention were the eyes. They were wide open, staring up at the ceiling, as if the victim had seen something truly terrifying before he died. Jameson tried to shake off the feeling of unease that was settling in his stomach. He needed to focus on the evidence. He started to take pictures of the scene, carefully documenting every detail. As he snapped photos, he noticed something strange in the background. There was a faint outline of a figure lurking in the shadows. He couldn't make out any features, but he knew that someone or something had been there. He drew his gun and started to search the building. The warehouse was enormous, and the rain made it difficult to hear anything over the sound of the drops hitting the roof. Jameson kept his gun pointed straight ahead, scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. That's when he heard it. A low growl coming from somewhere in the darkness. Jameson froze. He had never heard anything like it before. It was deep and guttural, and it sounded like it was coming from something massive. He started to back away slowly, his gun still pointed ahead. Suddenly, he heard a loud thud. It sounded like something heavy had landed on the roof. Jameson's heart was racing. He knew he needed to get out of there. But before he could make a move, he felt something cold and wet wrap around his ankle. He looked down to see a slimy, tentacle-like appendage snaking its way up his leg. Jameson screamed and tried to kick it off, but it was too strong. The tentacle pulled him off his feet and dragged him towards the darkness. Jameson clawed at the ground, trying to find something to hold on to, but it was no use. He was being pulled towards a fate worse than death. As he was dragged deeper into the darkness, Jameson could see more clearly the shape of what was holding him. It was a creature beyond anything he had ever seen, with multiple tentacles and eyes that glowed in the darkness. He knew that this was the last thing he would ever see. The creature pulled him closer and closer, and Jameson could feel its hot breath on his face. He closed his eyes and prepared for the end, but instead of feeling sharp teeth sinking into his flesh, he felt a sudden jolt of pain. He opened his eyes to see that he was back in the warehouse, lying on the ground. The creature was nowhere to be seen. Jameson looked down and saw a deep, bleeding wound on his leg where the tentacle had wrapped around him. He struggled to his feet, his mind racing with questions. What had just happened? Had he imagined the whole thing? But he knew deep down that he hadn't. Something was out there, something dangerous and deadly, and he knew that he had to stop it before it hurt anyone else. As he stumbled out of the warehouse and into the pouring rain, Jameson couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He looked around, but there was no one in sight. He got into his car and started the engine, still feeling the cold, slimy touch of the creature's tentacle on his leg. He knew that he had to find out what was going on, even if it meant putting his own life on the line. And as he drove into the darkness, he knew that he was heading towards a terror beyond anything he had ever experienced before. The hunt for the creature had just begun. The rain continued to pour down, hammering against the windshield of Jameson's car as he drove through the empty streets. He couldn't help but feel like he was being followed, like the creature was still lurking somewhere in the darkness, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike again. As he drove, Jameson's mind raced with thoughts of the creature. What was it? Where had it come from? And most importantly, how could he stop it? He drove for what felt like hours, scouring the city for any clues. But the more he searched, the more hopeless he felt. It was as if the creature had vanished into thin air. That's when he received a call from his partner, Detective Williams. "Jameson, we've got a lead," Williams said. "We found some strange tracks in the woods on the outskirts of town. They look like they belong to something big, something dangerous." Jameson's heart raced with excitement and fear. He knew that he had to follow this lead, no matter how dangerous it might be. He drove to the edge of the city, where the woods began. The rain had turned the dirt path into a muddy mess, and Jameson had to be careful not to get his car stuck in the mud. As he made his way deeper into the woods, Jameson couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. Every sound, every rustle of leaves made him jump. That's when he heard it again. The low growl. It was coming from somewhere in the darkness. Jameson drew his gun and slowly made his way towards the source of the sound. The rain had turned the woods into a murky haze, making it difficult to see anything more than a few feet ahead. But Jameson could feel that the creature was near. He could sense its presence, like a looming shadow in the darkness. Suddenly, the ground beneath him gave way. Jameson tumbled down a steep embankment, his gun flying out of his hand. When he finally came to a stop at the bottom, he looked up to see the creature looming over him. It was even more terrifying up close. Its tentacles writhed in the air, its glowing eyes fixed on Jameson's face. Jameson knew that he was in trouble. He scrambled to his feet, trying to find his gun, but it was too late. The creature had already wrapped its tentacles around him, pulling him close. Jameson felt the cold, slimy appendages wrap around his neck, squeezing tightly. He gasped for air, his vision starting to fade. Just when he thought it was all over, a bright light shone through the darkness. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream and released its grip on Jameson. Jameson stumbled backwards, gasping for air. When he looked up, he saw a group of people emerging from the darkness, wielding flashlights and weapons. They were dressed in strange, ceremonial robes, and Jameson could see that they were all shaking with fear. "We've been hunting that thing for years," one of them said, helping Jameson to his feet. "We call it the Beast. It's been terrorizing our town for generations." Jameson could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had stumbled upon something beyond his wildest nightmares. But he knew that he couldn't leave until the beast was dead. Together, Jameson and the hunters set out to track down the beast. The rain continued to pour down, making it difficult to see. But Jameson could feel the creature's presence, lurking just out of sight. Finally, they came upon the beast. It was cornered in a small clearing, its tentacles flailing wildly. Jameson and the hunters took aim, firing their weapons at the creature. The beast let out a final scream before collapsing to the ground, its body twitching as it died. Jameson couldn't help but feel relieved, knowing that the terror that had plagued the town for generations was finally over. As they made their way back to town, Jameson couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to the story. Who were these hunters? And why had they been hunting the beast for years? And most importantly, where had the creature come from in the first place? But for now, Jameson was just glad to be alive. He had survived a brush with death and had helped to rid the town of a terrible monster. As he drove back to his apartment, he couldn't help but feel grateful for his own life and for the chance to make a difference in the world.